Thank you, McConan. Thank you for having me on the virtual book tour. My name is Tracy Williams. Very quickly about my background. I am a teacher. I come from education. I have over 15 years of experience as a school leader. I work in central London. I've spent all of my career working in schools across central London, working with parents and children from probably every racial and cultural background that there is. I originally come from Bedfordshire, but I currently reside in Watford. So I do a lot of commuting on a daily and weekly basis. I am the author and creator of a series of stories called Stories to be Told. And they are basically short stories, or what I like to call poetic narratives, that talk about milestones and key events in the British Empire and about Britain's colonial past. And it's targeted for children aged between 9 and 14 years of age, because I felt as an educator and as a school leader, there were so many learning gaps within our curriculum, particularly in the UK. And our history topic still has this very Anglicanized and Eurocentric perspective and feel about it. And, you know, over the years, what's inspired me to write these stories was the work that I've been doing, organising Black History Month projects, working with the Nubian Jack Community Trust in conjunction with English National Heritage that do the blue plaques. If you've been wandering around London, you might have seen blue plaques on various street corners and key buildings that basically commemorate where famous figures have lived. So I was very much I've very much been a part of that. So that's been one of my inspirations. But I just felt that there just wasn't enough in our history curriculum in schools that could really join the dots and make connections between the past, and particularly in relation to the British Empire and Britain's colonial past, and, you know, things that are going on today. You know, understanding the way that, you know, that there's so much political unrest in the world, and why there is so much political upheaval, why countries develop and shape their foreign policies with each other in the way that they do. And I just felt inspired to do some research on the topic, because I've always been interested in it. I've always had a passion for history and learning about the past, and a passion for reading and writing as well. And so I thought I would write these stories. And so far, I have published 8 titles so far. 4 of them, the most recent ones, are just behind me at the back, but I'll go through them one by one. So the first one you can see here is called Caribbean Wind. And that is a celebration. That's an ode to our Windrush generation. And if I've got time, I'll read a little bit and share a little bit of that one for you. The next one is called Caribbean Rush. And that is about England's early encounters with the Caribbean islands. So it's sort of written about the time of the Columbian period. And it just talks about the origins of England's early encounters with the Caribbeans and their skirmishes, their battles with the Spanish and the French to try and claim those islands, and what happened as a result of that. The third book in the series is called Knights at the Round Table, the Berlin Conference 1884. That's my shortest story, but it's a perspective on the scramble for Africa. And the fourth book is called Gone with the Wind, Macmillan's Speech for Change. And this is set in 1960. And, you know, it was a time of great political unrest across the colonies, particularly British colonies in the Caribbean and in the Indian subcontinent and right the way across Africa. And the Prime Minister at the time, Harold Macmillan, made quite a groundbreaking speech, because Britain had become aware that it was post-war and things were changing, and it could sense that its empire was going to break up, and that this speech is all about how Harold Macmillan shows that awareness and prepares Britain for those changes. And then you got the fifth one is all about, we go to Hong Kong, and it tells the story of how Hong Kong became colonized by the British, and how that was then handed back to China in 1997. And the sixth book is called Bite from the Big Apple, A Story for New York. And that talks about the 13 colonies and the colonial era, and how New York came about. The seventh story in the series is called Hope for Zimbabwe, Arise the Phoenix. And that, again, together with the last story, the eighth story, Story for South Africa, talks about a bit about the pre-colonial history of South Africa in Zimbabwe, and about the journey through colonialism and the drive and the march for heritage. There's so much of our own past that is not taught in, and there's so much that we are going to have to take the initiative and rise up and do for ourselves. And I think that it's really important as well to understand that learning about our history and learning about our past and making the connections with today's events is all part of a lifelong journey. I very much am an advocate of lifelong learning. I've learned so much through my own research about this particular topic, and the stories are really encouraging young learners and anybody who has an interest in learning more about the British Empire to embark on their own learning journey and to join the dots and make connections for themselves. Hand in hand with the stories, I have a podcast series out as well. It's called Stories to be Told, the podcast series. And it's all the research that didn't make it into the stories have actually gone into a lot of these episodes. And these episodes cover all kinds of topics from the past, and they cover topics in the present as well that have that colonial underlying narrative, so that again young people can make those links and join the dots and make those connections between the past and between what is going on now. So just finally, I'd just like to explain the structure of the stories. They are short stories, which are very quick to read, easy to understand, and the aim is to inspire learners to engage with the topic, because I know it's a very emotive topic. It's a very difficult topic to look at. It's really fundamental to the uncomfortable truth that dictates and governs a lot of agendas, a lot of social, a lot of economic, a lot of political agendas that are still at play today, that beset people of colour all over the world and quite often put us at a disadvantage. But it's in two parts, the story. So a first part is the story, which you have in a couple of chapters. And then the second part at the end, when you've read the story, there's a part that's called the learning journey. And the learning journey has a chronology of the key events in the story. And then it says, continue your learning journey. So I put a series of questions to go with each of the stories, that if you want to continue your learning, it just points you in the right direction for further study and further research. And then there's a section called Build Your Vocabulary, where I take a lot of the language from the story and encourage the learner to continue, our young people, our children, to continue to build their vocabulary as they continue to learn, because building our vocabulary is so central to be able to learn to read, to write, and to speak and to listen. And you know, if you're a teacher like me, you'll know that it needs constant reinforcement, because it's the hardest. That's the hardest part of learning about literacy and learning the language, is to build the vocabulary. So you can get these books on Amazon. They are part of the Kindle Unlimited range, so you can download them as a bundle as well. They're available as ebooks on Apple Books, and they are available at Barnes & Noble as well. Or you can visit storiestobetold.com, which is my website, which is where everything lives relating to what I do. I have an art gallery there full of alternative history ideas. The podcast lives there as well as, you know, you can access the podcast on all major streaming platforms. And there's also additional learning journeys and mini documentaries, which have all been put together for learners to use and to explore, and to help them build their understanding further as they read the stories and, you know, get the most out of them and continue to enjoy them and read them again and again and again. So it's just about promoting the importance of lifelong learning, promoting the importance of understanding the past, owning our past, and understanding how our past links to the present day. And I think that is really, really important with the current situation that we have in our curriculum. You know, we've heard about even at university level, where courses that would help us, help our young people coming up, help adults as well coming up, to validate aspects of our past are being pulled out of the curriculum. And, you know, I just felt that it was my responsibility and my commitment to show my commitment to ongoing learning, and, you know, to this whole topic of the British Empire and its importance in understanding our past. It's central to the way the world is today, and I believe it can help young people as well as ourselves to develop that understanding and continue to claim ownership of our own history and of our own identity. So that's me. Visit storiestobetold.com. You can buy the books there. I'll put the link in the chat. And thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Makonnen, for giving me the opportunity to share my work.
Great. It was really good. Again, I enjoyed it. Like I did enjoy, you know, interviewing you for the Black Box radio show and podcast, which will be coming out very, very soon. Now, you've got a podcast yourself, as you mentioned. Could you just, you know, just tell us very briefly about, you know, the podcast that you've got? You want me to just mention it?
Well, it's called Stories to be Told, and the told is spelled Tolled rather than the conventional sense. So it's called Stories to be Told, the podcast series, and it's in its third season now. It's not an interview format. I don't do interviews, but what I do is I tell various key events and milestones about the British Empire. And I also find links and find connections with various topics that are trending today. So, for instance, I will link it in with various key things that might be happening, such as, I've done a podcast on celebrating the Windrush. I've done podcasts on Hong Kong and the link to tea. interesting connections between tea and how Hong Kong was colonized. I've done quite a few so far on the British royal family and the interest that has been sparked by King Charles wanting to have an investigation into how the royal family procured their wealth through the transatlantic slave trade. I've done a podcast on Prince Harry's book, Spare. I've done it on a range of topics. I've even linked it to the war in Ukraine and the whole situation that is going on at the moment, because we can see in history that history does tend to repeat itself. We can find patterns, we can find links to the past, even when we sometimes think that there is no link, because look, the war is happening in Europe and it's not happening elsewhere. But we can make those links because human nature is the same throughout the world, and we can make connections between what I call explicit themes, you know, those universal themes, and implicit themes that are happening within a particular situation. And what I try to do for children and young people is to develop that curiosity, maintain that curiosity and that passion to continue to ask questions about history and about the past, to continue with the lifelong learning, but also to model and demonstrate the importance of historical inquiry as well, and how we must try to become independent learners and independent thinkers, and not just go by what we learn through our formal education, what we learn in the classrooms, what we learn in the textbooks. But quite often, it's what you go out and research and find out for yourself that helps us to develop our understanding and really have clarity about what is really going on around us, and helps us to make sense of the world that we live in today. So that's what the podcast is all about. I think I've just done my 77th episode, so sort of 3/4 of the way through to my 100th episode. I'm just coming to the end of the 3rd season now, and yeah, it's you know, it's a body of work that I'm really proud of. I'm proud of the stories as well, but you know, when I first started it, I didn't think it was going to grow legs and have a head and start walking and talking, and it really has grown and flourished. And you know, I'll see for how long I can keep it up for. But it's called Stories to Be Told, the podcast series. Go and listen to it, and I'll put the link to my website in the chat.